Hello, there I am. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for swimming around to Canopy by Hilton this morning. We really appreciate it. For those who are watching and listening online, it was pouring down in Cannes this morning. But the rain stopped and the sun's going to come out and we're going to have a great conversation. So thank you all for joining us. My name's Sara Denby, and as Rupa said, I head up the UnStereotype Alliance Secretariat at UN Women. And for those who aren't familiar, the UnStereotype Alliance is a global collective of advertising practitioners, agencies, media platforms, and industry associations who are all committed to removing bias and stereotypes from advertising and media content in order to change society for good. So we're delighted to be here at World Women Foundation this morning. Thanks so much to Rupa and the team for her generosity and enabling us to be here. We're really grateful. And I'm thrilled to be joined by 4 fantastic colleagues and members of the UnStereotype Alliance. Christina Mallon, Head of Inclusive Design at Microsoft. Rebecca Swift, SVP of Creative at Getty Images. Tina Biswas, Group Vice President and Client Partner at Razorfish. And Asha Shivaji, co-founder and CEO of SeeMe Index, and in her spare time, a very highly valued member of my team at the Secretariat. Busy woman. So thank you for joining me, and for those online, thanks for tuning in. We decided to host this conversation today because there's obviously been an enormous swell of interest and discussion about the use of AI in generating advertising and media content. I appreciate when I say AI, I might as well say the internet. It's become such a sweeping, all-inclusive term. But we're really talking about generative AI, and that's what we'll be focusing on today. This time last year at Cannes, AI was the buzz acronym. And there was a lot of celebratory discussions about how it was going to revolutionise the industry. There was not a lot of discussion, and nowhere near enough for our liking, about how diversity, equity and inclusion was going to be reflected and embedded in the use of generative AI. That caused concern for us at the UnStereotype Alliance at the time. I voiced my opinion on it and came across like the bad news fairy. But here we are a year later, and we're really encouraged to note that all week there's been a lot more discussion about how we take a more cautious approach to using AI and use it much more intentionally. So that's encouraging. But that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about the advantages of using AI in the creative production process. We're also going to be talking about the need for very specific and intentional human intervention along the way. So do stick around. We'll be talking for 45 minutes or so and covering a lot of ground with different perspectives across my panelists today. And again, I've been asked to just affirm the UnStereotype Alliance is not anti the use of AI at all. We really do see some great opportunities to scale our collective work, and AI can help us do that. But we are advocating for the considered responsible use of AI, and that's what we're going to talk about right now. So let's dive in. Tina, I'm going to come to you first. I want to talk about the cultural impact of generative AI on consumers. I know you've had a lot of discussions with clients at Razorfish about this. So I'm keen to understand what kind of advice you give to brands and clients and your recommendations for using AI, and what are some of your words of caution?
Great question. First of all, thank you to Rupa and everyone here who organized this. It's really humbling to be part of this panel and part of this audience. So at Razorfish, we're really relentlessly focused on making sure our clients are developing and implementing inclusive marketing strategies. And when it comes to generative AI, what that means is we have to remember that generative AI is not a strategy, it's a tool. And so it's all about how you implement this tool. And the way we advise our clients to implement this tool is to ensure that there's diverse voices in the room that are making decisions around the implementation, monitoring, and testing of these tools. So one of the great brands that we work with and Rebecca works with is Dove, and they're a great example of how they take the time to really make sure that their brand values and their purpose are really coming through in the way they approach their content that they produce. And they have taken a stance, and I've also attended a lot of panels throughout this week here at Cannes. It's great that we're having this conversation on Thursday versus Monday, because you get the benefit of really learning and hearing what other brands are doing. And what struck me, especially when it comes to women and girls, is the conversation around beauty, and that came up in the first panel that we were listening to. And, you know, AI-generated content is critical for these beauty brands to make sure that they are promoting authenticity and inclusivity. And I was listening to a panel with Michelle Crossan, who's the CMO of Ulta Beauty. And what struck me is brands like Dove, Ulta Beauty, are really focused on taking a stance that they will not produce any content in their campaigns that are manipulated images. There's ways to use AI without actually putting these assets in these campaigns. It's a tool to accelerate your productivity, and that's how we're really encouraging our clients to look at it.
That's a really great point. And oh, hello, I'm back. And that's a really great point. And the fact that you're referencing how it can be used responsibly for a beauty brand and in the beauty category is something that leads me seamlessly on to Asha. Asha, you recently founded the SeeMe Index, which is very close to this topic, and that's where you've jumped off in terms of embedding the tool across a number of really high-profile brands. Can you tell us how these brands are showing up in advertising, and tell us a bit more about the SeeMe Index?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me today. At the SeeMe Index, we're using AI to measure brands' inclusivity. And what that means for us is we're measuring three things: their ads, their product line, and their external DEI commitments across 6 identity dimensions. That's gender, skin tone, age, body size, visible disability, and observed sexual orientation. And with this data, we're really we're able to bring data forward to different brands and to industries. And for the number one reason a lot of brands cite not taking more action with DEI is because of a lack of knowledge of how to do so and that lack of data. So we're really filling that gap. So what our company does is we work with brands, but we also do indices for different industries to help raise the bar for everyone. And to Sarah's point, we launched with beauty last year. We looked at about 40 of the top beauty brands, and there were some super interesting insights that you can only garner when you're using AI because you have that scale. One of the things we found was when it comes to skin tone in beauty ads, colorism is still very prevalent, unfortunately. For each shade deeper you get, you lose about a second of screen time in ads, meaning people with the lightest skin tones are in ads for 12 seconds and the deepest only 3 seconds. And it's shocking once you see the data, but you don't get to see that data without AI at the helm. Another thing we noticed was only 2.9% of people in all beauty ads had larger bodies. And this brought up a really interesting conversation with beauty brands because they often feature plus-size models or larger bodies, but only show a portion of their face. And if the AI is not picking it up, our human oversight isn't picking it up, you're really just not showing the full breadth and beauty of this person in your advertising. So aside from what the AI can pick up, the other really important component to think about when you're developing different AI tools or choosing AI tools is how you're categorizing that information. For us, we would never measure race because race is self-identified, so we measure skin tone. When it comes to skin tone, we're using the Monk skin tone scale that has 10 shades versus the Fitzpatrick scale that a lot of brands use and only has 6 shades. And 4 of those are for lighter skin tones and only 1 for brown and 1 for black skin. And that's because that scale was built by a dermatologist and has to do with how your skin reacts to sun. So it's really interesting, some of these older models or methodology that can make their way into AI if you're not careful in thinking about how you're really looking at the content and the insights you're trying to pull out.
I love that it empowers that kind of assessment at scale, right, in the blink of an eye, because one of the most alarming conversations that I was part of, but my jaw was mostly on the floor throughout it, that we've been working for 7 years in the UnStereotype Alliance, and some of our members for much longer than that, about authentic representation in the work, representing the consumers and communities that we are part of and that we serve. And yes, that takes a lot of intentional consideration and investment from brands. And the conversation that I overheard was, yeah, but now AI is going to enable us to effectively just colour them different. We don't need to hire these people. We don't need to bring them into the creative production process. We just need to do iterative versions of the ads for our different markets, and through AI, we colour them different. It is tantamount to digital blackface. And that kind of lack of representation that Asha's talking about, it's not even considered, right, in terms of, is this authentic? Are we giving equitable representation? In terms of how all our communities show up? So I was horrified, but I love the fact that AI is in fact being used to hold brands to account and give irrefutable data about this is actually how you're showing up, and it's not good enough, and do you realise that this is what your consumers observe and see? So I love that, using it for good rather than evil. Did I say that? Christina, I want to pass to you now, and your work on inclusive design has really had a transformational impact in similar but very different and incredible ways. Can you talk about the ways in which AI has opened up new opportunities for the community that lives with disability?
Definitely. So about 13 years ago, my arms became paralyzed due to motor neuron disease, and still are. And being a design strategist and using things like Adobe and different platforms there, I stopped being able to use them because it didn't use with voice interaction. And what AI is doing, especially for creatives, is allowing you to use your voice to create creations and giving you that ability back. That's just one example. When I think about my journey and being able to work full-time because of natural language processing, AI, in dictation, that has, the difference between having a job and not having a job, and it's a big part of my life. We're also seeing really great work that Microsoft, WPP, and Honda are working on to provide real-life audio descriptions of what's around you. So let's say you're on a road trip and you want to see, I want a beautiful description of the flora around me, and I don't want any buildings included. And it will give a real-time description no matter where you are using in the United States. So there's so many things that AI can do when integrated and thought and created with the disability community and other marginalized communities that are not at the table. And leading that effort across all dimensions of diversity at Microsoft has been a dream, because we are really at the forefront with AI and building tools into products that 1 in 8 people have around the world. They have Office, which is amazing. We're able to sit down and build this, not only the models themselves, but we're able to really make sure that the platforms these models are built in are accessible too. So really excited about how we're going to bridge the divide between the physical built world and the digital world, and these marginalized communities using AI as a positive tool.
Love that, and it's just the beginning. The acceleration of this development, it started to go a little off-piste in the beginning. I think we can all agree we got ahead of ourselves. I use the royal we, but the pace at which we're actually developing this kind of utility is just brilliant. So again, it's just such an exciting turn of events. in terms of content generation and how different communities are having input to the tools, obviously one of the pitfalls of generative AI is that new content, whether that's images or text or community reference, bad data in, bad data out, right? And there's a lot of bad data out there. And Rebecca, we know that this was a really critical part of building the Getty Images generative AI tool in terms of positive representation of all people and accessibility for all people. So can you talk us through how you navigated that?
Yeah, I think we were possibly slow to announce our AI Gen tool, but we've been working on it with NVIDIA for over 4 years. And the approach that we wanted to take was that we wanted to take the same kind of values that we apply to how we create content in photography and film to how we present our AI Gen tool. You know, in our industry, AI Gen content, you can imagine, is a massive conversation right now. And everybody wants to know, you know, is this the death of photography? I can pretty much guarantee it's not the death of photography. We have been here many times before as a company. We went from analog to digital photography, which was, you know, a massive change for our industry. We kind of worked through crowdsourcing and UGC and the advent of camera phones and visual social media, and photography still prevailed. So I suspect, you know, photography will continue to prevail in this, and similarly filmmaking. But there will be AI Gen content, and it will be part of our industry, and that is a fact. And so that we wanted to make sure that we were creating an AI Gen tool that was only based off permissioned content. So obviously our AI Gen model is only trained on our creative content. That's the only content that is fully released, and we have the rights to use it, and our creators have given us permission to put it into the tool. And then we also wanted to make sure we created a model whereby we could compensate our creators on an ongoing basis. So to ensure, you know, in addition to the royalties that they earn off licensed content, they're also earning royalties off AI Gen content. So again, you know, very much thinking about how we can sustain our community through this massive change. And the reason we did that was because there has been so much talk about the future of AI. You know, these grand sweeping statements, 90% of our content is going to come from AI in 5 years, 10 years, or whatever. This is the future. But no one is actually considering how we're going to get there. So right now, AI Gen models are trained on the past. They're trained on all of the content that has come before. I don't want that stuff to be regurgitated. I don't want to go back to the 2000s or the 2010. I remember stock photography in the 2000s. I don't want that stuff coming back again. Thank you very much. So we have to keep moving forward. We have to keep ensuring that we're, like, to Sara's point, the input is good. The only way we can do that is by continuing to support the people who are creating the content that goes into that. And so that's my focus. I run the creative team at Getty Images, but my team were also very involved in creating the AI Gen tool. But my focus day to day is ensuring that the input, that we continue to sustain our community.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm keen to talk more about that as well, because, you know, we've always advocated who makes the work is who shows up in the work. And if that's generated by big machine learning kind of thing, then where is the humanity in all of this? I'm also thinking about the fact that only 20% of the female population in the world has access to digital platforms or digitally connected. So that's a hell of a lot of people who are not generating data and seeing themselves therefore represented in the work. I do worry that it's putting creativity back in the hands of tech bros in Silicon Valley, and rather than the really diverse and inclusive communities that we've been working so hard to get around the table right from creative ideation stage. So that's something that you were really mindful of as well, right? Is making sure that the teams behind this content continue to be as diverse as Getty's been building up over the years.
Yeah, and that's bloody hard work.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard work to do that. You have to put the effort in, and you have to be really committed. You have to have a team of people who are really, really committed to that. And that's, you know, and that's exactly what we're doing. And we have held firm on not allowing any AI-generated content onto our site. And again, you know, we've watched our competitors all kind of, you know, flood their sites with AI gen content because, you know, naturally they're incredibly excited about it. But that then messes up your data, you know, messes up your pool of data for when you're training your model. So, you know, again, you know, holding firm in this kind of crazy time has been, you know, has taken a lot of energy and a lot of effort for us. But we feel like this is, you know, this is the way forward in terms of kind of, you know, how we see Getty Images into the next 10, 20, 30 years. Yeah.
Yeah, great that we're thinking about that now as well. And Asha, a lot of your work has been with DE&I practitioners. And you talked before about some of the findings that you've brought to life, which I'm sure they found pretty confronting. But can you talk a little bit about how brands then have actually used that insight for good? How are they leveraging those findings?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start with an example of a diabetes company that we worked with. And in analyzing their ads, what we found was the average person in their ads and their competitors' ads was someone with a lighter skin tone, medium body size, around 30 years old, and no disability. And when we took a look at who actually a diabetes sufferer is, it's someone with brown or black skin, with like 55 plus, larger body size, and has a disability. And showing them side by side this disparity between who they're putting in their ads and who their actual customers were was really eye-opening to them just to see that data. So that's really helped them make some significant changes in how they're casting and what they're highlighting in their claims. And similarly with claims, we were working with a skincare company. I think most of you have seen a lot of skincare claims that say, like, tested on most people. Well, who's most? I, for a really long time, thought I was most, and in fact, I'm not. So we've been working with different beauty brands to find out who they're really testing with and helping them highlight those stories. And a few brands, I'll call out Clinique, is doing a really good job of this. They call out the ages of the people that they're testing on, melanated skin types, and we're using that to help other brands in the industry to make some shifts to really talk about who they've tested on and help really drive more resonance with those claims. Because you will buy a product and you want to make sure it works for you and it's been tested on you.
Absolutely, gosh. The power of that and just being able to come up with that evidence base for where the creative and the representation needs to be positioned is just so powerful. And back in the day, would have taken weeks of research if you could even get your hands on those kind of learnings, right? So it is incredible. Tina, I want to switch back to you for a second. We've spoken a bit about integrity being built into AI tools. But from a brand perspective, what are some of the key considerations when clients are really keen to jump into partnerships and utilize AI tools? What are some of the key things they need to be thinking about?
Well, I think first of all, it's trust and transparency in the digital assets that are being created is really critical. And Razorfish is a proud member of the C2PA, which is the Coalition for Content Provenance and Authenticity. And what that means is the C2PA has developed a framework to really understand and explain where the source of the digital assets that you see across different websites, and how it does that is it creates labels. So what I've seen as a problem, and I'm the mother of 3 girls, ages 12, 14 and 19, and they're actually up watching this live stream right now, even though it's 4:30 in the morning or 5 in the morning. And one of my concerns as a mom is that these kids are exposed to all these deep fakes and disinformation and things like that. So it's really incumbent on the brands to make sure that their digital assets that people understand where these assets are coming from. And so the CTPA is that framework to ensure that labels are put on these assets, and the BBC News does a great job of this. Is their websites all have their properties have labels on anything alerting them to fake news, disinformation. So it goes back to authenticity in the brand content that's being put out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that that's one of the first pieces, it's like the internet and social media, it's so difficult to regulate, and that's where the acceleration of development with AI has kind of got ahead of the game, right? But I do think that, and we're seeing it already, the regulatory frameworks are going to kick in with having to be transparent around what's AI generated or not. But Christina, we've talked about the power of AI, the accessibility benefits, but in terms of representing communities, in terms of getting good information, good representation out there, we've talked about bad data in, bad data out. And from an UnStereotype Alliance perspective, we've long been concerned there's a lot of crap out there already, right? And so if Gen AI is a content aggregation tool, that means that all the bias and misinformation and stereotypes from the past could easily be pulled forward into new content. But what about if that content isn't out there in the first place? What about if there are vast communities like the disability community that is either invisible, unrepresented, underrepresented, or misrepresented? We're super excited that we're embarking on a project together to help course correct and skew the algorithm, if you like. I'd love for you to talk about that.
Sure. Yeah, so 1% of the media features people with disabilities in it, and 20 to 25%, depending on where you get your reports, are the amount of people with permanent disabilities around the world. So there's a huge mismatch there. So what we're looking at is how can we have the individuals who come from the communities provide content and imagery of themselves, how they like to be represented, and then open source that so that individuals building models can take this data and representation and be able to ensure that when they are creating Gen AI tools, that disability is within those data sets and it's represented the right way. Even though disability is only in 1%, most people say even that 1% of media does not represent them with a disability. So it's crucial because we are moving so fast that individuals and members of the UnStereotype Alliance and Microsoft are working together to really provide this type of data, because work we've seen is it's not showing up correctly, and we want to make a change really fast. So look out for that work. It's just in the beginning, but I think we need to do the co-design of the data to ensure that these communities are represented, because truthfully they're underrepresented in the data now.
We're so excited to be partnering with you on that. The Disability Data Stewardship is the catchy title we have for that project. It's great. I love it. And especially the idea of stewardship, but putting the power in the hands of the community. That's the best way and the surest way to achieve authentic representation. So we're really excited to be partnering on that with Christina and with Microsoft. So we're getting close to time, but before closing out, I want to do a quick fire round of wins and watch outs. We've touched on a lot of different aspects and perspectives today about utilizing AI, the benefits of it, the watch outs. So I just want to come to each of you, and I can get the ball rolling on this by saying a win for me is understanding how we can use AI at scale to assess the level of representation, to achieve and get insights on the data about what actually constitutes representation, almost on a per capita basis, per community basis, and using it as a support for the work, not necessarily to do the work, which I think is a really important differentiation. And a watch out for me is always insisting on human intervention at key points in the process. This can't just be a plug-and-play solution. We still need to get human eyes, human insight and human sense checks before sending this stuff out into the world. So we've heard some great examples of why that matters. So Asha, I'll come to you next. Wins and watch-outs.
Great. My win is really that we have data. Data has been a big question mark when it comes to inclusivity, and we now have it, and we can let it guide us. So I think that's a massive step forward for us and for all of us that care so deeply about a more inclusive world. My watch out is that this is a tool. Use it. It'll help you do much better work, but it in no way is a replacement for your teams, for the people that are so critical behind the camera, in front of the camera. But let it enhance your work and make it even stronger.
Great point. Thank you. Tina.
So my win kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier about there's more conversation around the pitfalls of using Gen AI this year versus last year. So again, C2PA has made strides. It was announced last year that we joined the steering committee from a publicist perspective. And so since that time, in this past year, there has been such a focus on ensuring there's trust and transparency on all the digital content that's out there. My watch out, similar to Asha, is making sure that the rooms in which these decisions around the implementation of Gen AI, the monitoring, and making sure there's ongoing monitoring of these large language models that are being trained, and then optimizing. And we need to make sure that we're optimizing to decrease the inherent bias that exists within these tools. So that's my watch out.
Fantastic. Thank you. Rebecca.
I have to say, I think some of the wins, and I've seen examples of this already, is where AI, and I'm going to talk specifically about content, but is where AI is being used to represent a future that is, that is slightly more optimistic than what we're seeing in a lot of the content, but kind of using it to represent, if you invest in certain communities, if you create, a world where, LGBT people can live, freely and express themselves in the way that they want to, then this is what the world will look like. This is what it will bring you. That is, that is very much kind of an ideation and an inspiration, although we are starting to see some of it in advertising now. That to me seems like a good way of using AI, because trying to get the budget to represent some of those worlds is, you're never going to get a brand to pay for that. But equally, and what's the other one? Watch out. Watch out. Equally, watch out. If you see yourself, if you believe you are creative, if you believe in creativity, if you believe in working with creators and creatives, then invest in them. Find a way to spend money so that you can help them continue to do their work and allow them to continue to work in this industry. AI is cheap, it is fast, but it's not always the solution for the content you're creating.
Brilliant point. Thank you. And Christina.
Yeah, no. So one of the wins is just personal to me, is that AI and generative AI tools allow for individuals across the cognitive spectrum, I have ADHD, to do more. And that is key, because technology is not always considered, and the ability of technology confidence is not always considered in the product design. So really, really excited about that. I think, one of the pitfalls or things to watch out is, the person that's gonna, really upskill themselves to understand how the tools work, because many of the tools are free, to help them be more productive, more creative, if you're going to stand on the sideline and say, oh, I don't want to do this, I'm scared of AI, that's the people who are going to be left behind. Microsoft has so many free AI education pieces and things like Khan Academy. There's so many areas where you can learn how to use AI as a tool. And I really suggest you to learn fast and quick now so that you feel capable as technology moves further and further and gets better and better.
And do you have a watch out, or is that kind of the
I mean, that's the watch. Is like make sure that you are studying it and you are learning it.
Yeah.
Because I think that when people talk about, oh, I'm scared it's going to take my job. No, someone using AI might take your job because it allows you to be more creative, more productive. And I think, there's a lot of people that are not thinking it's going to affect them at all, but it's going to affect every single job ever.
Yeah. I remember 100 years ago when social media was introduced, and I was working in ad agencies then, and 3 weeks into a new job and was told social media is now at the core of everything we do, and I was like, what? It completely upended. That's minuscule in comparison, right, to the power and efficiency and of AI and what that can do. But even social media just completely changed the way we approached our work and certainly how brands go to market. So I think we need to take those learnings, but get on board fast because it's not going backwards. So this is an area obviously where you're going to be hearing much more from the UnStereotype Alliance and our 240 member organisations across the world. But this has been a fantastic conversation to kick that off on the Cannes stage. So thank you so much to my esteemed panellists. Really appreciate your time and your expertise on this topic. And thanks so much again to Rupa and World Women Foundation for hosting us this morning. Thank you to all of you for coming, and thanks for tuning in online, especially Tina's daughters in the middle of the night. Thank you all.